Hello and welcome to Two Girls in a Pod. I'm Sharon.
I'm Christy.
Hope all of you are doing well and that you had a really great Thanksgiving holiday and gearing up for our next one. You know, that's always fun times, right? It's funny because we were talking about traditions and stuff, and we're not going to call them traditions, but we're going to call them generational patterns that we get caught up in. And one that we were so caught up in is Thanksgiving. And, this thing of it for Thanksgiving, how you have a turkey and you do all this. And what did we realize?
We're making a lot of food for just a couple people that didn't really eat it very much. So it doesn't make any sense anymore.
We're not big turkey eaters like that. So, we would do the turkey. At first we would do the turkey, then we would do the giant, the big turkey that was a full turkey. Then both of us are like, we don't even like dark meat. So like, okay, what do we do different then? So then we switched it to turkey breast. And it still wasn't resonating with us, huh?
No.
No.
And it's interesting because, part of the reasons that I think that we kind of made that decision too is our family is smaller. So there's not the gathering that there used to be with everybody. So I know that has an impact. But sometimes I think that even in those situations, it's interesting how much stress and struggle there is with the dinner. I do remember big Thanksgivings where it was like, no, I'm making the turkey and this one's making their own turkey and all of the, just the craziness of all of it, I feel like. And I think that's some of the stuff that you have to identify. So even when there's big gatherings still, questioning, what are we doing here? This is a little bit of madness sometimes.
And I think even going further than that, when we get together for holidays and we don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
We've changed, they've changed, something's changed. And instead of just saying, that's too big of a crowd for me. Now we have 9 extra children or whatever, or people have married in and whatever it is. And you find that it's really not resonating with you. So then you have an increase in your anxiety going into these holidays, and it's not as fulfilling as you thought it would be. Mm-hmm. Then if you just said to to whatever family member you're thinking about, say, hey, you want to come over for dinner? And maybe doing it individually or even a group of them or whatever. But we continue to do these things that really do create these negative feelings in us,
And sometimes it's not even about the other people. I know that Christmas has become really stressful for a lot of people because they feel this pressure, I think you see this especially around the holidays in general, where, there's just all this pressure to conform to ideas that we've just done again and again. It's this generational thing. And there's all this stressors around buying presents and what that means and how do you pick it? And maybe you're picking something they hate, but there you are.
You're buying for people that you really don't know. They're just kind of in your circle or whatever. It's like, God, the stress. Thank God our circle is little because it's much better. But I do think that what we run into, though, a lot of times is when we're doing these things and when we're talking about this kind of tradition, this is not like one family's tradition. This is a societal conditioning.
Yeah.
This started back in the day and we're still doing it. Fast forward. Guess what? We don't have to go out and hunt our own turkey because that's all there is available. We can have different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We can do that. And one of the things for us is for Christmas, we do an enchilada dinner, See you smile already. See you smile already. But that's the thing is that we have to realize that a lot of these patterns, I'm not going to call them traditions because it's not even a tradition. It was a societal pattern made at a time period and a construct that we continue to buy into. And once again, if it's not something that resonates with you, turkey, don't do it.
Yeah. And that's the main thing. It's like, I think that there are a lot of, yes, you're saying patterns, but I also think that traditions fall into
a tradition is a pattern.
But a tradition also can hold a lot of value in that. So
absolutely.
It's just the idea of questioning, is this right for me still? Am I sustaining this because of the societal pressures to do so?
And that's what I think is the biggest thing is we actually sat down and said, why do we keep making this meal we don't eat and we don't like?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now guess what? We just don't do it. But we still can have the tradition of the gathering or whatever it is. And then it used to be Thanksgiving was about family and stuff like that. And now, there's the Friendsgiving. So we're expanding and we're changing on these older patterns.
Yeah, not saying take away the celebration or that, just looking at how you celebrate and what that means and what it looks like for you, because it could be different.
100%. And when we're doing these things, understanding that it's not about it's not a negative thing when we challenge those things because we're talking this one is about things or about holidays. We have generational trauma. We have generational work. So, historically, well, if I worked in the coal mine and my daddy did and my granddaddy did, we're going to work in the coal mine, and then if the coal mines go away, it's like, oh my God, I feel like I'm losing a part of me or whatever. Not understanding that that's not the premise of why this was all set up.
Mhm.
But we have those social economic patterns of behavior, teachers, military, police officers. There's a lot of different ones that you'll see family members do this. And when you ask the family member, well, what made you decide to become a teacher? Say, well, my parents are teachers. Okay, so does that mean because your parents are teachers, you're going to be a teacher? Is that what resonates with you? Well, that's all I know.
Mhm. Or not, never thought of doing anything else, even, I mean, those things can be passed down. And I understand that a lot of times it's for reasons that your family may say it's a profitable thing to go into or that, or maybe it's just a self rewarding thing or that. But those things are very much ingrained in us. So,
How many dreams have been squashed by this is what we do?
yeah.
And it's sad because I think too much of the time people are living these lives. I just want you to know I'm trying to do this. And this is why we normally don't do this at our home because my dog is licking me and it's very distracting. It's not a comfort in that way. It's just like, could you please stop? But she doesn't listen. Anyway, and that's what I love about podcasting and this because it's very real. It's very in the moment and it is, very live as you can, well, not live, but, recorded as we do it.
We have accepted the fact that we are her emotional support humans.
Yes. And we're okay with it. We just go with it. So I hope y'all bear with us in this. But even those things, when we get so caught up in that, and the other thing is, oh, you're the firstborn and you're the firstborn. Well, it's different because we also have generational patterns as well.
Mhm.
And when we're looking at those generational patterns, they're very ingrained in us. And one of the things is I was doing a talk on Noom Vibe, and this is what we were talking about is this fact that we get so ingrained in this and how the subconscious is such a big part of that. It's such a conditioning of our system in a way that it becomes almost like this is me.
Mhm.
And so if it's me, then it takes away my idea that I have a choice.
Right.
I can make a different choice.
I think it takes away some of our own creativity.
Absolutely. And once again, oh, I really aspire to be this, but this is what we always do in our family. So that's what I'm going to do. And I have people who, oh, well, maybe doing engineering was one of the things. And it's like, for engineering, you need to know math. I hate math. Well, that's going to be a really hard career for you, to try to figure out how am I going to do this career when it's something that I don't like,
Mhm. Yeah.
So I think those are the things we look at. And I want people to understand that it's not something we're doing consciously.
Right. No, and that it's not always a negative. Like you were mentioning, we were talking about it when you were saying about the work ethic that is passed down generationally, sometimes, and how that can be a positive, but it can also play into a negative if we're not also taking care of ourselves and setting a boundary too. There's a balance with everything.
Oh my goodness, it just made me that song Cats in the Cradles by I think it's Cat Stevens came to mind. And the reason why is if you've never heard the song, it's about the dad. He's kind of a workaholic in a way. And the kid just wants my dad came home from school, I came home from school the other day, all of these things, and the dad's too busy. Yes. And I'll get to you, I'll get to you because these generational things. Then you fast forward, the son is now a dad. And guess what? He's doing exactly the same thing. He doesn't have time for anything. He's got work.
Mhm.
The new job's a hassle on the kids. and all this and that. So even in that, that's a really good song that shows how those patterns, how as children we learn those patterns. It's not like there was a conscious thing of the father to say, I want you to grow up to be just like me. But guess what? You grew up to be just like me.
Mhm.
And how many times I get people who come into my office and say, I don't want to be like my dad or my grandparent or my mom or my this or that. These my aunt, my uncle, these the generation before, even one before that. I don't want to be like that. And then guess what? They find that that's exactly how I'm being.
Mhm.
I am actually being the very thing that I said I did not want to be.
Yeah.
It's because it's conditioned into us. And because of that conditioning, it's really hard. It's hard to undo that conditioning. And the only way we undo that conditioning, we always talk about this, is through our ability to have an awareness that it's happening in the first place.
Mhm. I mean, asking ourselves these questions helps us to identify how much of it is, I'm buying into just how it's always been and what I really want.
When we look at these things, it's to realize, and even in talking about this, it's not that to say that something is right or wrong, because these aren't about moral judgments and things like that. It's kind of like if it's not working for you, or if it doesn't feel good, and you don't feel like you're excelling in it, or it's not resonating with you.
Creating angst or an incongruency. Yeah, you have to look at those things.
And it was really interesting because one of the people who jumped on today on the talk, she was saying about that thing of the collective versus me as an individual. If I choose me as an individual, now I feel selfish and I have guilt. Two things that keep us stuck because of that conditioning.
Mhm.
Oh, you're just selfish. What do you mean you don't want to do this? You want to go be alone? Well, how dare you want to be alone? We're doing this. We always do this.
Mhm.
And then what does the person start doing? Like, they're right. I really should go. And it's really not about me. And continue to live somebody else's version of our life. And guilt is a huge thing that people use to keep those things that are comfortable and familiar.
Mhm.
It's that comfort and that familiarity and something that keeps us there.
Yeah.
Even though it's familiar, it may not be resonating at that level that it should for us.
Mhm. I think that one of the biggest areas that you see that, and we've talked about that, and how people view finances and things like that, and how they think that about putting away for their children or that to have inheritance and
Mhm.
things. And we've talked about the podcast that we listened to, Yo Quiero Dinero. Janice Torres was talking to a lady about that. And she was saying that she felt like one of the biggest gifts that her parents gave her was that throughout their life, they made sure that they were taken care of through their old age and that they were able to be self-reliant, self-sustaining. And even if they needed help or that, they planned for that. So she didn't have those stressors, when it came down to their aging and that, how was she going to help take care of her parents and that? And I know a lot of people struggle with that. So, I mean, I thought that was a really cool concept for her to bring out,
And definitely breaking a generational philosophy, sometimes within cultures too. But when that person does have that ability to say, we get old, we've made it, we've made provisions to do this so that you can be there with us and for us, but without the burden of the
Yes.
finances and all of those things. We're making these decisions now.
Yeah. And if they're doing that, I think that that leaves room for so much more quality of time that they have left on this earth with their family members. Then you're able to spend that time not focusing on the stressors of how do we fix this for mom and dad or that. That's hard.
And, understanding that there's nothing wrong with that generational thing, because there are many cultures that they have the family system is made up of not just the nuclear family, but it can have grandparents or family members or extended family. That's not what we're talking about.
No.
But we were watching a movie, and it was interesting because in the movie, he was very frustrated and upset because they were in a system where all the money went into one pot. And he said, I feel like I work and I work, and, basically, I'll wait for my little handout from you because you're the head of the household. So I have to wait for that. And he hated it. He wanted his own money. He wanted that, but the culture did not allow it.
Yeah.
And sometimes stepping outside that culture is huge,
Yeah.
and it's scary. And when you step outside a culture, whether it's a religious culture or a ethnic culture,
Mhm.
that's really hard because those are generational. I mean, really embedded generational norms.
Yeah. Well, I could say it's not to say that any of those things are wrong.
No.
If everybody is happy and the situation makes sense for everybody and it's not impeding on anyone, it has to be, I think everybody has to realize what's right for them.
Yes, and I think there's a thing that we are able to blend the two together. So we have those things. It's not taking away somebody's individuality.
Mhm.
And when the one was talking about that, the collective versus the individual, the thing is I can still set aside time that is about me, and at the same time still be helping with that collective.
Yeah.
I talk with my hands, and she thinks that means, I don't know, let's lick mama's hands or something. Because, yeah, but then everybody's going to say, well, listen and watch your podcast, but only if the dog's there. Because we even, people come to see us, my sister and that. Oh, no, they don't come to see us. We already know it's for the dog. So we don't need to pretend anymore to have ranking. But those are the things, is how do we know how to be our individual within a collective?
Right.
And I always tell people this, the more you learn about who you are, the healthier and the stronger you are. Guess what? The stronger the collective gets to be.
Yeah.
But when we try to just do one or the other, that's why we don't have that balance. There's a balance within that.
Yes. We have to check in with ourselves in order to be the healthiest version of ourselves. And I think that, just asking ourselves these questions, no matter what area of our life it's in, it's important so that we can be better versions of ourselves.
People are doing a lot of research on these things, and everybody likes research, right? But there are people who are there and they're looking at, how is this really playing out? And the cool thing is, now we can use longitudinal studies where we can look at multiple generations versus just 2 generations back or whatever. We can now look and see, how has that been effective for the culture, for the unit, or whoever it is. One of the other things that we see changing is, historically, one of the cultural norms was for women to be at home, have babies, take care of the home, all of those kind of things. And what you're seeing now is a lot of women are saying, no, let's put a pause on that. I'm going to do my college, or I'm going to start my career. Then I'm going to think about college. But we're also having more people who are couples are making the choice to have no children.
Yeah.
Which is, for some families, is like, what? How many times? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. When am I going to have grandbabies? They're always telling me, parent, when are we going to have grandbabies? They're like, never. And it's funny to me because I have some younger clients that are probably 16 or 17 to 23, I think it is. And they're the females, and they're saying, I'm not going to have kids. And I've already told my parents, I'm not going to have kids. And the parents, you'll change your mind.
And you can,
And you might.
I don't think that you would have seen even some of those decisions being made today if something didn't change in our society even prior to that, where that, it became necessary for both parents to start working. I think that played an impact in some of that change too.
It's interesting you said that, because sometimes when society changes, it changes those norms. And that's how these are constructs and they're not something that's we're born with, or that nurture piece of it. We know that.
Yeah.
And the reason we know it is because if society says we got to change till we have 2 people working, then guess what? The mom at home no longer is the same thing. It's more rare. Now you have some women who say, I just really want to be a stay-at-home mom, or I have those the dads that want to be the stay-at-home dad. Those are the things we're talking about. It's changing as the society is changing.
Right.
So our norms will change. And then, we'll look at the next 2 or 3 generations down. It's going to it may look totally different.
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting to see how all those patterns play out.
Yes. So if we know that something is economics changes these social things, don't let economics make those decisions for you.
Yeah.
Start making decisions for yourself. Start bringing that stuff into your awareness in order for you to be able to change it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with looking at those things. And, one of the things we're really doing right now, we're reading a lot. And I think to continuously learn is so important for us, because through the learning that we continue to have our growth and development.
Yes.
Some of the things we're reading is about those. Sometimes we get caught up in those ideas and that subconscious, and then we're playing out these roles constantly.
Mm-hmm. Just because it's like the only thing we know.
Exactly. And I think what's kind of sad about that is it is the only thing we know, but it's not. It's the only thing that we attend to.
Yeah, it's the only thing that we've never challenged and tried to identify why we continue to do the stuff that we do.
Exactly. Every blanket also becomes hers. So you don't have a blanket that's ours anymore. But the thing is that it's, once again, to bring it into awareness and then to challenge it as far as, is this truly me? Is it resonating with me? Is it helping me springboard forward? Am I just so complacent with it? When we talk about those patterns, and so let's take it out of even the seriousness of the patterns that kind of keep us stuck. One of the other things that happens is, like, if you have been in a job for a hot minute, we were doing this the other day. We were driving somewhere and she wanted to turn towards work. And I said, but we're not going to work. And it's those automatic. And how many of you have been driving? You get up, get in your car, you're at home, you're at your office, and they're like, oh my God, how did I get here?
Yeah. Or it's a Saturday. I shouldn't be here.
That's even more. But
we're creatures of habit.
Yes, it's those patterns. We create patterns very quickly. And even if that job, you haven't had that job for very long, guess what? You already have that pattern. So you think about these things that have been around for generations, how embedded they are in us, and how when we make that decision to change something, how come it can be so scary.
Because we feel like some of it's written in our DNA.
If that change, that will change us. But I think what we're seeing and this is my, we've talked about, this is our belief that because of all of these things, because of this subconscious stuff and not attending to it, and not acting and being stressed out about a lot of different things, we're dying way too young for a country that has the advancements that we do and everything. We're still dying way too young.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, we're stressing and worrying about things. And a lot of times it's those patterns. If it's work, oh my God, no, I got to do this. I grew up and this is my work, and I got to, having that same mentality.
I can't believe how many people are stuck in the rut of working at a job where that they're working well over the amount of hours and not even getting compensated a lot of times for it. I mean, that just makes you, it's like nose to the grindstone with that all the time, and you'll get really burned out.
I agree. And I think the other thing is how many people out there are working jobs that they hate.
Yeah.
They hate them. But, I went and got my degree in it because that's what I was supposed to do. So I'm going to stay working in this. Well, I got my degree in it, so I got to use it because I got to pay for that. All of these crazy thoughts that go in our head that are somebody else's idea of how we're supposed to live our life. When in actuality, go work the job that's going to make you happy. We only have one flipping life.
Yeah.
And we're so busy with my life. How much of it I can sit back and say, was I living that was somebody else's version, or societal versions, eating a turkey and making a turkey that's not even what we want.
Right.
Those simple things. And when you start looking at it, ones that came on today too, one of her comments was, as a parent, my dad would yell and I didn't like it and I didn't want to do it. And she said one day she was there and she realized she was yelling at her kid and it was like, why so extreme? So as soon as it became in her awareness, she was able to change it. But the thing she said she wasn't going to do, but because it was a pattern,
Mhm.
it was that generational pattern. Therefore,
That's what
I
she
just
do.
keep doing it.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that we're looking at in that aspect of if it's something we want to change and we keep seeing it creep up, it's because it's been integrated into us, like you said, almost on that molecular DNA um level, start
Mhm.
thinking, oh God, we'd have to cut off a piece of us to get rid of it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Mhm.
Even now we're reading a book called Oneness by
Russia, I believe is her name.
okay. And even in that, she's talking about some of that same stuff.
Mhm. It's a really interesting read because she talks about having the awareness and looking at all those things and how much of what we do is just that pattern of behavior and how we can improve our lives if we start to question some of that and let some of it go.
We're looking at that. And I think even when she's talking about that, it's that ability to start looking at self.
Mhm.
And once we're able to start looking at self and having that awareness to ourselves and that ability to grow and develop, we start to see that that's still a part of the collective. And so there doesn't have to be any guilt, like I'm not giving or I'm not interacting, if that makes sense.
Mhm. I think generationally we are always comparing ourselves, and that's part of the problem too. You see, like even in the last book that I was reading, Think and Grow Rich, he
Mhm.
talks about you have to look at the ideas that you've gone along with all this time and believed and has kept you from moving ahead, even on a financial level or whatever. He's like looking at some of those beliefs is important.
And I think it's interesting because he wrote this book in 1937, so
Like
around
33 or
33,
something.
37. And it's interesting because he wrote this at that time. And guess what? Some of the stuff he wrote about, that's fast forward to 2024, we're still dealing and doing the same stuff.
Mhm.
That's generational.
Mhm. He talks about over time how that things have to change between the business owner and the employee and how there has to be this there should be uh gratitude that both are there to make the business what it is. It has to be he says you can't get something basically for nothing because you need to give from that place. If you're there and putting your all into something, what you do for one another in that is important. The business owner and the employee.
And I think, what we did is we see, and if we're talking about business, we've seen a shift where it used to be employees and employers had more of a working familial relation, not familial, but familiar relationship with each other. So oftentimes, if you worked at a certain level, you still knew who owned the company and or ran the company or all of those things. You still knew them.
Mhm.
They weren't so far removed.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at companies, I think if we take the really big companies like Amazon, Google, the big companies, are who owns the company is so far removed
Yeah.
from the people working in it. Those people that are making the money for you,
Mhm.
they're so far removed from it.
Yeah.
So people, I don't know. I don't know who I have three people ahead of me. I don't know who they are.
Mhm.
So even in that, the structure of business has changed.
Yeah.
It's gotten bigger. And
Mhm.
so it's really more if you hear a lot of people talk about how unhappy they are at work because management does this or I mean it's just all sorts of stuff. We're not communicating. We're not sharing those ideas and listening willingly to ideas and things like that.
I think we're not realizing the connectedness in all of those things and how
Yes.
we help push each other up when we're both giving to the same degree.
Exactly. And I think we're looking at this and we're talking about change. It's understanding that my priority is to change me first.
Mhm.
I have to start here. And then from here, I tell people start here. Then from there, you go into your home and then out into your neighborhood. And then you extend, you kind of keep broadening that to be a part of that connectivity with our communities and things like that.
Mhm.
But if I'm so busy giving and giving and giving and giving, and I have some client, oh my goodness, one client, she was always giving for all of her life. She always was just somebody who gave and worked. And I'm looking at her like, oh, you're tired all the time. Oh, geez, I wonder why. You're running here, you're running here, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing all of these things. And now, fast forward, she has started to set boundaries. She's had to let go of relationships. But she goes, I have energy. And she says, I realized that when I was doing all of that, I wasn't even taking care of my family, much less me. But it was the expectation.
Mhm. That's why it's important, I think, to have the awareness to those patterns and that because I mean, and there's nothing wrong with giving, but when you're to the degree that you're depleted in that way, you have to look
Exactly.
at that.
Another series that we've been reading is Dr. Joe Dispenza. He has a wonderful series of books that addresses some of these, and he really talks a lot about that subconscious, those things that have been so ingrained in us that they every time we're about ready to make change, it rears its ugly head because it wants the status quo because it's been there forever. It has taken up residency,
We think
you
it's
know.
set in stone.
Well, it's that thing of, well, I've been here 10 years, I'm going to stay here for the rest of my life or whatever. And how that can be so detrimental to us when we don't start to figure out why am I having these reaction and responses?
Mhm.
We had that the other day. She said something to, don't even remember what it is now because once I process it's gone. But I had a strong emotional reaction. And then I realized I was having it towards her. But I was in the middle of work, so we couldn't continue our conversation, and I said, "No, gotta go." So I went, started my work, and my client had to get up and do something, and in that little time, I'm sitting there thinking, "What is that about?" And then it was like that. Once I said, "What was that about?" The thought, it was a freaking memory from I'm talking way back, way back. It was so far back, I can't even believe that it was still present. But as soon as I identified it and I finished the session, I went to you and I said, "Oh my God, this is what it was." I said, "This triggered what you said triggered me." And this was something that happened as soon as I processed it and that it was gone. I literally let it go. I don't hold on to it once. And somebody even asked me, "Well, what was it?" I don't know. I can't remember it because it happened. I processed it and it left. But the power of that and not having, if I had just continued to say, maybe start an argument with you and continued on, guess what? That would have stayed and it
Mhm.
would have reared its ugly head at some other point.
Mhm.
But that's a conditioning that happened a long time ago that I didn't have an awareness to
Exactly.
until I was forced to have an awareness to it.
I think that the awareness is the most powerful thing because a lot of times, you're when you're not identifying that, it's like you say, you could have gone to that emotional place and just
Mhm.
argued a point and been defensive and not even understanding where that was really coming from.
When I talk about these things and I tell my clients, when I'm talking to you about things and I'm giving recommendations or I'm saying, I think this might be beneficial. It's always you can use it or you don't. But I also tell them, I don't ask you to do stuff that I haven't done other than take medications because I don't need a medication. But other than that, when I'm talking about how do we be mindful, how do we meditate, how do we change processes, how do we become aware of something, how do we identify something? Because guess what? Nobody's above in this game.
No,
We're
exactly.
all we all have something because of all this generational stuff. In order to get away from it, we have to start talking about and identifying it first.
We have to have that introspection. And I think that a lot of times people are almost even afraid of that because if this doesn't resonate with me, how do I explain that to all the people around me who expect me to do this or that or the other?
Exactly. And I think that we also forget that other people make choices. And in those choices, they expect because of those roles or because of that generational stuff, that other person is going to go and become that or do that just simply because it's been around for, 1,000 years or whatever, that this is how you act as a parent child or spouses or whatever. And, historically people stayed in really horrible marriages.
Mhm.
horrible marriages.
It's like that they had to.
We don't have to. But once again, you are more afraid of divorcing because of the stigma, and now, oh, you are a divorcee. You're not going to job. We're not going to look at you. But that's what people thought.
Yeah.
There was such a horrible societal consequence almost for you divorcing.
Yeah.
It was like, how? No.
They were afraid they were going to get wished into the cornfield.
Man, would there be a lot of people in that cornfield to make yourself a whole little community. But no, seriously, when we look at that, it almost would create that in there. Well, nobody in our family's ever been divorced, and you're not going to be the first. Like, seriously, you think you can keep me from divorcing or whatever? And now people, it's more unlikely that people stay married. When people find out that we've been together for 25 years, that they're like, oh my God, how do you do that? How, they
The
might.
bigger question is, how do you spend all your time together? Yeah.
I think that's a funny thing too. And I tell people, everybody's relationship is different. You've got to make it fit for you outside of, because we do, our friends, you guys are around each other a lot. And guess what? She's my best friend. I want to be around her. But
So it works out good.
Yeah. But the other thing people don't understand is when I'm working, she's working. So there's a huge chunks of time that we're really not together. But if we're going to vacation, we're going to vacation together. We want to share that experience.
Mhm.
But I have some couples that I don't want you to go on my vacation. I want a vacation from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just different people, but it's really important for each person to decide what is resonating with them. It's not about other people.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing. If you were raised a people pleaser because, your mom or dad were the people pleaser, and then you can almost look and see and follow that pattern in a system.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people, it's not just the pattern of your family system. You have to take time to look at those societal ones.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? Well, everybody's doing it. Okay. How many of you out there, when the new word of the day comes out and you sit there and say, if I have to hear that word said one more time, because it becomes so popular, that's all you hear.
Yeah.
That's a societal norm. It's a temporary one. But pretty soon everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
And it's like, even if you don't want to, or you're just doing, we are doing and existing instead of living and thriving and all of those other things that I think are so much more important.
Yes. Ask yourself the questions.
What do you think would be the important questions to ask?
Well, why am I doing this? What does it bring to me?
Really? Am I happy?
Yeah.
Is this all?
Yeah.
Can I do more?
Or should I be doing a little less?
I like that one better. Are these relationships resonating with me? Or am I afraid to go out and make other relationships? You're right. I think it starts with the question. And I think for each individual, the question may be different. But I think it's always, why am I doing this?
Yes. What is my why?
What is my why? And I think another thing is, do I have passion for this?
Mm-hmm. And if you don't, look for what does light your fire.
Really, because once again, we only have this one life here
Yeah.
to live. And when we spend even a year not living our life, it feels like an eternity sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to realize that in order for us to be happy, I believe this, every single human being has the right to be happy and to be loved and to love.
Mm-hmm.
Those three things.
Yeah.
And when we are able to do that, but it starts with, how do I see myself?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm angry all the time, or frustrated, or anxious, or sad, or more of the time than not, then I have to ask myself, what is it in this patterns
Yeah. What pattern am I stuck in?
Yes. What pattern am I stuck in? And, but it means I have to sit down and be honest. And it means that sometimes that decision I make may not resonate with another person. And that's where we usually get our thing of guilt and selfishness is if I sit there and say, I can't do this, I need this for me, then we have to be aware of that. And we have to know that other people might be upset with it.
Mhm.
And I always tell you, one of the things I like and I respected about your mom is when we set boundaries and she sat there and said, No, I don't like those. I don't like boundaries.
I like boundaries. That's what she said.
And she didn't. And at first it was pushing up against it. But then guess what?
Things got better.
Yeah. And she also realized she could set boundaries. It was okay for her to say, no, I don't want to do that, or this, that, or the other. And that's what it is when we do those things and we're role modeling behavior. And that's what I tell people, and particularly parents. We role model behavior.
Mhm.
And once you role model that behavior, and if you role model that you can change and you can make different choices that are about you or whatever, then guess what? They now know, oh, wait, I can do that.
Mhm. And that's powerful. It gives people permission in a way to feel okay about setting their boundary or saying this or that, about what they feel about it.
100%. One of the other things is that if you're going to do, if you're at that place, one of the things that could be helpful is if you have that person that you really trust, go to them, talk with them, use people as a sounding board. That's why people come to therapy, because there's some pattern. It is a pattern that they're stuck in.
Mhm. And sometimes I think that you don't know what you want to change, how you want it to look, or how you want to change it. And sometimes having a conversation with somebody that helps you define that, helps you to come to that place to know what it is that you want to do, or what you want to replace, and what you want to change.
Well, I think that's true. And I think that's why, there are so many therapists out there. That's why we see an increase in coaching and things like that, because the people need something different, a different idea. They need that. So there's all of this stuff that's coming into play.
Mhm.
So just remembering that those sounding boards are important. You don't have to do this alone.
Right.
Even and that's what I love is because when we have this, like I said, I had that moment. I was like, oh, wait a minute. So then I went and used her as a sounding board, and then it was like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And you just work it through and you walk away from it.
Yeah. I celebrated when we didn't have to have turkey for Thanksgiving anymore.
And now we don't really do a whole lot of gluten, so that takes out about the other 3/4 of the turkey traditional meal for us anyway. So
Right.
it's like, why are we doing this? Let's do something that we really enjoy and we like, and we
And we
can.
can feel good after we eat it. Really.
I mean, I am contemplating a dessert. I just don't know which one yet. I'm working on it. But it's not going to be a traditional dessert, or whatever. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, you guys work at it, figure it out. Take those little risks, challenge yourself, step outside the block, your comfort zone, laugh about things. We'll do stuff and it won't work out. Just as you laugh and say, well, that was not the best idea.
Mhm.
Then we go back to the drawing board on that.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? We have the ability to do all of these things,
Mhm.
but we have to first ask the why.
Exactly.
And we have to ask you also have to say, am I happy?
Mhm.
Am I even content?
Yeah. And if you are, great. There's
And
nothing
you
to
keep
change.
you keep doing what you're doing and build on that.
Yeah.
But if you ask that question and the answer is no, then that is a really good time to start looking at those patterns. What pattern is keeping you stuck?
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll come out of the blue. But instead of not attend to it, figure it out and let it go and move away from it.
Mhm.
So once again, there's a lot of great resources out there. And it's important to use resources so that you don't have to do these things alone.
Mhm.
Okay. And as always, we are so grateful. And, but, real quickly, a new year starting, not that you have to wait till the new year. Y'all can start right now changing our patterns. But with the new year, that's a good time to say, ask the why question. Why am I happy? Am I content? And do I have passion for what I am doing?
Mhm.
And then that's a good place to start in this new journey of changing patterns, creating your own patterns that are really resonating and have more value
Right.
for you. And as always, it's not to discredit or get rid of other things that traditions and stuff, they're important to people. It's always an individual basis. Okay. There are some people out there who love turkey dinner and wait for that, wait for that. This cracks me up. And people will say, I say, what are you waiting for your holiday dinner? Green bean casserole. And I'll say, you really like it that much? Mm-hmm. When else do you eat it? You can make green bean casserole any day of the year. But how many, when I ask that, they'll say, the holiday. But you love it that much. My one kid, oh man, he wanted green bean casserole so bad for Thanksgiving. He gets there, and guess what? There's no green bean casserole. He goes, Miss Sharon, I'm going to have to wait another year. And so his grandma goes, no, I'll make one for Christmas dinner because he was all disappointed. Even in his head already, he thinks he can only have green bean casserole on Thanksgiving. Is that not insane?
Yeah.
So that's a pattern. We need to change that. If you want green bean casserole, I told him, make green bean casserole. But anyway, as always, we're so grateful. And you can always find us on
twogirlsandapod.com. And if you subscribe, you will receive an email whenever we post a new episode. We really appreciate all of you listening. And you can find the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also, you can find Adventures of Two Girls and a Pod, Life's Journey on YouTube. And we would love for you to like, subscribe. There's some different things on there. You'll see our little fur baby on there. And Sharon has some mixology with Sip and Savor, so check those out. Also, our coloring books on Amazon, Grateful Beginnings, they are a great Christmas present or anytime. Adults or kids, coloring can be a lot of fun, at least for me. I know that not everybody likes it, but anyway, it's about having a conversation about gratitude and showing, our gratitude for just all the things
the little things. Even.
Yeah.
And, even on that, if you do purchase in that, going back, writing reviews, liking and stuff, which we did not know that, because if you don't, then it pushes you to the bottom of the thing. So nobody can find you unless now you can put in Grateful Beginnings and it actually pulls us up because we've had enough, I guess, activity. If it stops and we go to the bottom and then you can't find us, you have to put in Sharon Abeta and Christy Banta. So it's crazy, but we appreciate all the support that we get from everybody. We're very, very grateful for it. And, once again, thank you so much. We have immense gratitude for everybody who listens and follows and likes and shares and does all the things that they do, and supports us. So thank you very much. And we will be back next week. And the other thing is we enjoy and we welcome comments to the podcast. That's another huge thing. Getting comments and interactions is really, really important.
You can also direct message. We are on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah. Two Girls and a
Pod Life's Journey.
Yes. Anyway, thank you so much. And we will be back next week. Bye.
Bye.